The ISS Retribution's cannons roared to life, launching volleys of tungsten shells that tore through the Voth fleet's shields like shrapnel through flesh. Bruce Morales stood at the helm of his aging warship, his eyes locked on the viewscreen displaying the sleek, advanced vessels of the Galactic Empire's fleet. The Voth commander, Altair, had demanded Bruce's immediate surrender, threatening to execute the millions of humans in captured colonies if he refused. Bruce sneered, his battle-hardened face illuminated by the glow of weapon controls coming online. He was infamous for his brutal tactics against the Voth, a ruthless alien race that had subjugated countless worlds. Now they had the audacity to think they could strong-arm humanity with hostages. The Voth have underestimated human resolve for the last time, Bruce growled into the comms. Power to weapons and shields now. The human crew, loyal to the end, responded with shouts of acknowledgement as they diverted energy from all non-essential systems. The ISS Retribution, despite its battered exterior, hummed with newfound power. Ancient human weapon systems, long thought extinct, flickered to life. Altair hesitated for a moment, taken aback by the intensity in Bruce's voice, before ordering his fleet to open fire. A barrage of plasma torpedoes slammed into the Retribution's shields, but to the Voth's shock, they held firm. "Return fire," Bruce barked. The Retribution's mass drivers unleashed hell, firing shells at relativistic speeds. The Voth ships, their hulls breached, began to break apart under the onslaught. Altair watched in horror as his armada crumbled, the primitive human weapons bypassing their advanced defenses, like they were made of paper. As the Voth fleet desperately tried to regroup, Bruce knew this was humanity's chance. If they failed here, the Voth would tighten their grip on the galaxy, and mankind would be forever enslaved or wiped out entirely. The fate of the human race hung in the balance, and the crew of the ISS Retribution were the last line of defense. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he gave the order that would decide the future of his species. "Launch the Ares missiles. Let's show these bastards what happens when you back humanity into a corner." The bridge crew erupted into cheers as the nuclear warheads streaked toward the heart of the Voth fleet, the sight of the incoming doom reflecting in Altair's widening eyes. Bruce remained stoic, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. This was just the beginning of a war that would determine the very survival of the human race in a hostile galaxy. The ISS Retribution's jump drives hummed as it sped through hyperspace, the stars outside blurring into streaks of light. Bruce Morales sat in his command chair, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The stunning victory against Altair's fleet had given humanity a chance, but Bruce knew that the Voth would not take this defeat lightly. They had to strike fast before the enemy could regroup and retaliate. "Sir, we're approaching the coordinates of the nearest Voth-occupied human colony," the navigator reported. Bruce nodded, his jaw set. "Bring us out of hyperspace. It's time to liberate our people." As the Retribution dropped back into real space, the view screen filled with the sight of a massive asteroid field. Intelligence reports had indicated that the Voth were using human prisoners as slave labor to mine these rocks for valuable resources. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he saw dozens of Voth freighters hovering near the asteroids, their hulls laden with ore. "Scan for human life signs," he ordered. The sensor operator's fingers flew over her console. "I'm detecting hundreds of humans, sir. They're spread out across the asteroids, but the majority seem to be concentrated on the largest one." Bruce's face hardened as he pored over the data scrolling across his screen. The Voth were working the prisoners to the bone, forcing them to toil in the unforgiving vacuum of space. Many had already died from exhaustion, starvation, or decompression. The survivors were barely clinging to life. "Target those freighters," Bruce growled. "We need to cut off their supply lines." The Retribution's cannons roared to life, sending streams of tungsten shells hurtling toward the Voth ships. The freighters, caught off guard, tried to scatter, but it was too late. The human weapons tore through their hulls like they were made of paper, igniting their precious cargo and turning them into fireballs that lit up the void. The Voth guards, realizing they were under attack, scrambled to mount a defense. Swarms of smaller ships rose from the asteroids, their weapons already firing. but the Retribution's shields held firm, and its point defense lasers made short work of the enemy fighters. "Sir, I'm detecting a large concentration of Voth life signs on the largest asteroid," the sensor operator reported. "They seem to be guarding something." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "That must be where they're holding the majority of the prisoners. Prep a boarding party. We're going in." Minutes later, Bruce led a team of his best fighters onto the asteroid's surface. They were met with a hail of plasma fire from the Voth guards, but the human soldiers were faster, stronger, and better trained. They charged forward, their own weapons blazing, and cut through the enemy lines like a hot knife through butter. As they fought their way into the mining complex, Bruce was shocked by what he saw. Human prisoners, many of them barely more than skeletons, toiled under the watchful eyes of Voth overseers. Some were so weak they could barely lift their tools. Others lay unmoving on the ground, their bodies broken by the relentless labor. But what shocked Bruce the most was the sight of some familiar faces among the prisoners. Men and women he had thought long dead, crewmates from past missions, stared back at him with haunted eyes. They had been captured by the Voth, they told him, and subjected to unspeakable horrors. Many more were still held in other colonies, suffering the same fate. Bruce's hands shook with rage as he freed the prisoners, his resolve hardening with each emaciated face he saw. He vowed then and there to make the Voth pay for their crimes, to liberate every last human and burn the Voth Empire to the ground. As the freed prisoners were brought aboard the Retribution, Bruce received an urgent message from human intelligence. They had intercepted Voth communications, suggesting that Altair had survived the destruction of his fleet and was now en route to the Voth homeworld to gather reinforcements. "Set a course for the Voth homeworld. We're taking the fight to their doorstep." The Retribution leaped into hyperspace once more, the stars outside blurring into streaks of light. Bruce stared out at the passing cosmos, knowing that the war was far from over. But with each liberated colony, each strike against the Voth, humanity was one step closer to reclaiming its place among the stars. The Retribution's engines roared to life as it hurtled through hyperspace toward the Voth homeworld, a sleek metal behemoth cutting through the void. On the bridge, Bruce Morales stood tall, his eyes locked on the viewscreen. Jack Rains and the other crew members darted around him, making final preparations for their most daring mission yet. Bruce knew that a frontal assault on the heavily defended planet was out of the question. It would be suicide. Instead, he had a plan, a surgical strike at the very heart of the Voth's power structure. "The codes we got from those liberated colonies had better work," Bruce muttered as he punched in the stolen access sequences. The Retribution shuddered as its hull shimmered, the advanced cloaking technology disguising it as one of the Voth's own supply ships. As they approached the planet, Bruce held his breath. The seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. Then, miraculously, they slipped past the orbital defenses, undetected. "We're in," Bruce said, a grim smile on his face. He turned to Jack. "You have the con. I'm taking a team down to the surface." Minutes later, Bruce and his hand-picked strike force were speeding towards the planet in a cloaked shuttle. As they descended through the atmosphere, the sprawling Voth capital city came into view. Bruce couldn't help but stare at the alien metropolis. Towering spires of gleaming metal and glass reached for the heavens, their architecture both beautiful and unsettling. It was a far cry from the utilitarian structures of the human colonies. The shuttle touched down in a secluded alley, and Bruce and his team moved out, weapons at the ready. They stuck to the shadows, avoiding the patrols of Voth soldiers that roamed the streets. Their target was the Central Command Center, a monolithic structure that loomed over the city like a watchful guardian. Bruce led the way, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. They managed to slip inside the building, taking out the guards with silent efficiency. Bruce marveled at the opulence of the interior, soaring ceilings, ornate carvings, exotic materials. It seemed the Voth spared no expense when it came to their own comfort. The team made their way to the top floor, where the central control room was located. As they burst through the doors, they found themselves face to face with Altair and his top generals, huddled around a holographic display. The Voth leader looked up, shock and rage warring on his reptilian features. "Kill them!" he snarled, reaching for his weapon. All hell broke loose. Plasma bolts filled the air as Bruce and his team dove for cover, returning fire with everything they had. The Voth generals fell one by one, their lifeless bodies littering the floor. But Altair was a different story. His advanced armor seemed to shrug off the humans' weapons, and he fought with a savage ferocity that was terrifying to behold. Bruce found himself locked in hand-to-hand combat with the Voth leader, trading blows in a brutal dance of death. Altair was strong and fast, and his blows felt like sledgehammers. But Bruce was fighting for the survival of his species. With a roar of defiance, he managed to rip off Altair's helmet, exposing the alien's pale, scaly face. Altair's eyes burned with hatred as he lunged at Bruce with a hidden blade. But Bruce was faster. He dodged the blow and delivered a crushing punch to Altair's throat, collapsing his windpipe. The Voth leader gasped for air, his eyes bulging. Bruce stood over him, his face a mask of grim determination. "This is for every human you've ever enslaved, every world you've ever conquered," he growled. Then he delivered the finishing blow. With Altair dead, Bruce and his team fought their way back to the shuttle, leaving a trail of Voth bodies in their wake. They radioed the Retribution, calling for extraction. But as they reached the rendezvous point, Jack's voice crackled over the comms, laced with static and urgency. "Bruce, we've got a problem. Voth reinforcements just dropped out of hyperspace. The Retribution's shields are failing. We can't hold them off much longer." Bruce closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Then he made his decision. "Jack, evacuate the crew. Get everyone to the escape pods. I'm staying behind to cover your escape." "What? No, Bruce, you can't." "That's an order, Jack. Get our people to safety." There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. "Aye, sir." Bruce watched as the escape pods jettisoned from the Retribution, streaking away into the void. Then he took the helm, his hands steady on the controls. The Voth ships were closing in, their weapons pounding the Retribution's failing shields. But Bruce didn't falter. He charged straight at them, the Retribution's cannons blazing. The Voth ships scattered, caught off guard by the suicidal charge. The escape pods slipped away in the confusion, unscathed. Bruce smiled as the Retribution plunged into the heart of the Voth fleet. He had succeeded. His crew was safe. Humanity would live to fight another day. The Retribution exploded in a blinding flash of light, taking a dozen Voth ships with it. From the escape pods, Jack and the other survivors watched in awe and grief as Bruce's sacrifice dealt a crippling blow to the enemy. As the pods drifted through the silent void of space, awaiting rescue, Jack felt a tear slide down his cheek, but there was also a fierce pride burning in his chest. "We'll finish what you started, Bruce," he whispered to the stars. "Humanity will rise again." The escape pods drifted through the silent void. The survivors of the ISS Retribution's final stand huddled together in the cramped confines. Jack Rains, his face still smeared with the blood and grime of battle, clenched his fists as he thought of Bruce's sacrifice. The man had been more than just a commander. He had been a friend, a mentor, a beacon of hope in humanity's darkest hour. But there was no time to grieve. The Voth would be coming for them, eager to snuff out the last embers of human resistance. They had to strike back, and fast. "Set a course for the Lysander asteroid field," Jack ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting commands during the battle. "We have a base there, hidden in the heart of the rocks." The escape pod's meager engines flared to life, propelling them through the void. As they approached the asteroid field, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the sight. Thousands of rocks, ranging in size from pebbles to small moons, tumbled through space, their surfaces pockmarked with craters and scars from eons of collisions. But nestled among the chaos was a glimmer of hope, a sprawling human base, built into the heart of one of the largest asteroids. As the escape pods docked, Jack was greeted by a ragtag group of human fighters, their faces etched with the same grim determination he felt in his own heart. "What's the situation?" he asked, stepping onto the base's deck. Not good, a grizzled veteran replied. The Voth have been hitting us hard. We've managed to gather a small fleet, but it's not enough. Not nearly enough. Jack's eyes widened as he saw the ships docked in the base's hangar. They were a motley assortment of vessels, ranging from small fighters to battered freighters. But there, towering over them all, was a sight that made his heart skip a beat. The ISS Defiance, a massive battleship bristling with weapons and armor. "How?" he breathed, staring up at the behemoth. "We've been building her in secret for years," the veteran said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Ever since the Voth first attacked. She's not finished, but she's ready to fight." Jack nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. With the Defiance at their head, they might just stand a chance. But then a klaxon blared, red lights flashing through the base. "Incoming message," a voice crackled over the intercom. "Priority 1. Jack raced to the command center, his heart pounding. On the main view screen, a haggard human face appeared, static distorting the image. "This is Earth Defense Command," the man said, his voice laced with desperation. "The Voth are coming. They're massing for a final assault on Earth. We can't hold them off. We need help." Jack's blood ran cold. Earth, the birthplace of humanity, the last free human world. If it fell, all would be lost. He turned to the assembled human leaders, his face set with determination. "We have to stop them. We have to draw their fire, give Earth a chance." "But how?" one of them asked. "We're outgunned and outnumbered." "We split our forces," he said. "Send a small group of ships to hit Voth outposts, draw their attention. Make them think we're scattered and weak." He pointed to the star map, his finger tracing a glowing nebula. "Meanwhile, the rest of the fleet will hide here in the Oort Nebula. We'll let the Voth chase our decoy ships right into our trap." There were murmurs of assent, heads nodding. It was a gamble, but it was the only chance they had. "The Defiance will lead the decoy group," Jack said. "She's the biggest target, the one they'll chase." He turned to the veteran, his eyes hard. "Gather every ship we have, every fighter, every freighter, every rust bucket that can still fire a shot. We're going to need them all." As the base erupted into a flurry of activity, Jack strode towards the Defiance, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew the odds they faced, knew the chances of success were slim. But he also knew that Bruce's sacrifice would not be in vain. Humanity would fight to the last, would never surrender. They would bleed the Voth dry, make them pay for every inch of space. The Defiance's engines roared to life as Jack took his place on the bridge, the stars stretching out before him. The hunt was on, and this time it was humanity who would be the hunters. The decoy ships darted from outpost to outpost, striking hard and fast, before jumping away into hyperspace. The Voth, their blood boiling with rage at this insult, gave chase, their ships speeding after the fleeing humans. But it was a trap. As the Voth ships followed the humans deep into the swirling clouds of the Oort Nebula, they found themselves surrounded. The human fleet, hidden in the nebula's depths, emerged from the fog like vengeful ghosts, their weapons blazing. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jack watched the battle unfold, his face lit by the glow of exploding ships. The human vessels, smaller and more maneuverable, darted in and out of the nebula's cover, striking at the Voth's flanks and underbelly. The Defiance herself was a force to be reckoned with, her advanced cannons and thick armor allowing her to go toe-to-toe with the Voth's biggest ships. She waded into the fray, her guns roaring, leaving a trail of shattered enemy vessels in her wake. But the Voth were far from beaten. Their ships rallied, forming a tight defensive formation around their flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons. At its heart, Jack knew, would be their leader, a ruthless warlord named Zygon, who had taken command after Altair's fall. "Bring us in close," Jack ordered, his eyes hard. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going to cut the head off this snake." The Defiance surged forward, her hull groaning as Voth weapons pounded her shields. But she held firm, her own guns hammering back in reply, until she was close enough for Jack and his elite Marines to launch in boarding shuttles. They cut their way into the Voth flagship, a fierce firefight erupting in the corridors. Jack led from the front, his rifle spitting death, his face a mask of determination. They fought their way to the bridge, leaving a trail of Voth bodies in their wake. There, standing amid the carnage, was Zygon himself, a towering reptilian figure clad in battle armor. "Pathetic humans," the warlord sneered, drawing a crackling energy blade. "You think you can defeat me? I will wipe your kind from the stars." Jack's response was to charge, his own blade leaping into his hand. They met in a clash of sparks and steel, trading blows in a deadly dance. Zygon was strong, fast, his every move calculated and precise. But Jack fought with the fury of a man who had lost everything, who had watched his friends and comrades die at the hands of the Voth. He pressed the attack, his blade flashing, driving the warlord back. And then he saw it, a gap in Zygon's armor, a weakness at the joint of his neck. With a roar of triumph, Jack lunged, his blade sinking deep into the warlord's flesh. Zygon staggered, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He toppled to the deck, his lifeblood pooling around him. On the bridge of the Defiance, a cheer went up as the Voth flagship exploded, consumed by a chain reaction of detonating reactors. The rest of the Voth fleet, their leader fallen, their formation shattered, fell into disarray. The human ships pressed their advantage, a barrage of nuclear torpedoes leaping from their tubes. The warheads detonated in the heart of the Voth fleet, a blinding flash of light that consumed ship after ship in a roiling fireball. As the last Voth vessel exploded, the human fleet erupted in cheers and shouts of triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. But Jack, standing on the bridge of the Defiance, knew that this was only the beginning. The Voth's power was broken, but they were not yet defeated. There were still human worlds to liberate, still battles to be fought. He looked out at the stars, his face set with grim resolve. Humanity would not rest until every last trace of the Voth was wiped from the galaxy. They would fight on, in Bruce's memory, until the universe was free. There would be no surrender, no retreat, only the cold, hard vacuum of space and the fire of human defiance. The war had just begun. The victorious human fleet, battered but unbowed, regrouped at the secret asteroid base. In the command center, Jack Rains pored over star maps and intelligence reports, planning their next move. The loss of the Defiance and Maria's sacrifice weighed heavily on him, but he knew they couldn't afford to lose momentum. "The mining colony," he said, jabbing a finger at the holographic display. "The one Bruce liberated. We need those resources to keep fighting." The fleet set out, the ISS Retribution once again at the vanguard. But as they approached the colony, their sensors detected Voth ships in orbit. The colony was back under enemy control. "Those bastards never let up," Jack growled. "Prep the Marines for ground assault. We're taking it back." Dropships full of heavily armed soldiers descended on the asteroid, breaching the airlocks and storming the tunnels. Voth guards fell under a hail of gunfire as the humans pressed forward, determined to free their enslaved brethren. In the depths of the mines, Jack's squad encountered fierce resistance. Voth overseers, armed with plasma whips and shock batons, drove the human prisoners to work even as the battle raged around them. "Take out the overseers," Jack ordered, ducking as a plasma bolt sizzled overhead. "Free the prisoners." Among the prisoners, a young man with fierce eyes grabbed a fallen Voth's weapon and turned it on his captors. His aim was true, and Voth soldiers fell under his onslaught. Jack noticed the young fighter's bravery and skill. "What's your name, soldier?" he asked as the last overseer fell. "Alex Novak, sir," the young man replied, standing tall amid the carnage. "Welcome to the Resistance, Alex," Jack said, clasping his shoulder. "We could use a fighter like you." With the colony secured and the prisoners freed, Jack turned his attention to the next target, a Voth shipyard churning out new warships to replace those lost in the Nebula battle. It was heavily fortified, but taking it out would deal a major blow to the enemy's ability to wage war. The human fleet, the ISS Retribution at its head, launched a surprise attack. Voth ships, caught off guard while still under construction, fell under the withering barrage of the human weapons. But as they pressed the attack, a new threat emerged from the shipyard's hangar. A massive Voth dreadnought, its weapons already charged and ready. At its helm was a familiar figure, Altair, back from the dead and hungry for revenge. The dreadnought singled out the Defiance, the humans' most powerful ship. On the Defiance's bridge, Captain Maria Salazar gritted her teeth as the ship shuddered under the dreadnought's assault. On the ground, Jack and his Marines fought their way into the shipyard's control center. Alex Novak proved his worth once again, taking out a group of Voth soldiers who nearly flanked their position. They planted explosives, ready to reduce the shipyard to rubble. But just as they were about to detonate, the Defiance took a critical hit. Alarms blared as the ship's hull breached, venting atmosphere into space. Maria knew the ship was lost. With a heavy heart, she gave the order to evacuate, but stayed behind herself to buy time for her crew. As escape pods jettisoned from the dying ship, Maria set a collision course for Altair's dreadnought. The Defiance's reactor went critical, and both ships vanished in a blinding flash of light. From the ground, Jack and his Marines watched in horror and awe as the Defiance made its final sacrifice. With heavy hearts, they detonated the explosives, destroying the shipyard and dealing another blow to the Voth's war machine. As they evacuated the colony, Jack felt the weight of the losses they had suffered, but he also felt a renewed determination. With Alex by his side and the memory of the fallen driving them forward, he knew the fight would continue. No matter the cost, humanity would be free. The ISS Resilience's medbay was a hive of activity as medical personnel rushed to stabilize the wounded from the daring raid on the Voth space station. Among them lay Alex Novak, his body broken and bleeding, his life hanging by a thread. Jack Rains stood by his bedside, his face etched with worry and exhaustion. He trailed off, the unspoken truth hanging heavy in the air. Alex might not make it. Jack nodded, his jaw clenched tight. He reached out and placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, careful not to disturb the web of tubes and wires keeping him alive. "You did good out there, kid," he whispered. "Real good. You saved a lot of lives today, including mine. I won't forget that." He stood there for a long moment, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor, the hiss of the ventilator. Then, with a heavy sigh, he turned and walked out of the medbay, his mind already racing with the next steps in the war against the Voth. In the corridor outside, he was met by Lieutenant Sarah Briggs, his second-in-command. She snapped a crisp salute, her face a mask of professionalism, but Jack could see the concern in her eyes. "Sir, we've received word from our intelligence network," she reported. "The Voth High Council managed to evacuate the station before it was destroyed. They're on the move. Destination unknown." Jack cursed under his breath. The raid had been a failure then. They had risked everything to capture the Voth leaders, and they had slipped through their fingers. Sarah shook her head. "Negative, sir, but our analysts believe they may be regrouping at one of their secret bases, possibly to plan a counter-attack." Jack's mind raced with possibilities. The Voth would be looking for revenge after the humiliating defeat at the shipyard and the attack on their space station. They would strike hard and fast, targeting human colonies and outposts. The ISS Resilience and her crew would need to be ready. "Tell the bridge to set a course for the Arcturus system," he ordered. "We'll regroup with the rest of the fleet there and plan our next move, and have our scouts keep an eye out for any Voth activity. We can't afford to be caught off guard." As she hurried off to carry out his commands, Jack turned to look out the nearby viewport. The stars stretched out before him, cold and unforgiving, a reminder of the vast emptiness of space. Somewhere out there, the Voth were plotting their revenge, their ships and soldiers ready to unleash hell upon humanity. But Jack was ready too. He had a crew of brave men and women behind him, each one willing to lay down their lives for the cause. They had the Resilience, one of the most advanced warships ever built by human hands, and they had the indomitable human spirit, the will to fight and survive against all odds. As he gazed out at the stars, Jack made a silent vow. No matter what the Voth threw at them, no matter how dire the situation became, he would never give up. He would fight to his last breath, until every last Voth invader was driven from human space. For Alex, for Maria, for Bruce, and for every human who had ever suffered under the Voth's tyranny, he would see this war through to the end. The ISS Resilience's engines hummed to life, propelling the mighty ship forward into the unknown. On the bridge, Jack took his seat in the captain's chair, his eyes hard with determination. "Take us out," he ordered, his voice steady and clear. "We have a war to win." "Das Tixas." The ISS Resilience's medbay bustled with activity, as the wounded from the colony battle were rushed in for treatment. Among them was Alex Novak, his body battered and bruised, but his spirit unbroken. Jack Rains stood by his bedside, his face etched with concern and pride. "You did good out there, Novak," Jack said, clasping the young soldier's shoulder. "Damn good, we wouldn't have won without you." Alex managed a weak grin. "Just doing my job, sir." But there was little time for celebration. Even as the Resilience's crew tended to their wounded and repaired their ship, urgent reports flooded in from human intelligence. The Voth, it seemed, were preparing for a final, desperate assault on Earth itself. In the Resilience's briefing room, Jack pored over the data with his senior officers. The Voth had pulled back their remaining forces, concentrating them for a single overwhelming strike. If they succeeded, humanity's homeworld would fall, and with it, any hope of victory. "We have to stop them," Jack said, his voice hard with determination. "This is our chance to end this war once and for all." The odds were heavily stacked against them. The Voth still outnumbered the human fleet and their weapons were formidable. But Jack had a plan, a daring, desperate gambit that just might work. "We've learned the location of the Voth's main weapons factory," he said, bringing up a holographic display. "They're producing a new type of bomb there, a planet killer capable of destroying an entire world in a single blast." The officers murmured in shock and horror. Such a weapon in the hands of the Voth would be catastrophic. "I'll lead a strike team to infiltrate the factory and sabotage the bombs," Jack continued. "Meanwhile, the Resilience and the rest of the fleet will engage the Voth forces in battle, drawing their attention away from us." It was a risky plan, but they had no choice. If they couldn't stop the Voth's planet-killer bombs, all would be lost. As the Resilience sped towards the fateful confrontation, Jack assembled his team. Alex Novak, still recovering from his wounds, but insisting on joining the mission, was among them. They approached the weapons factory in a stolen Voth shuttle, using captured codes to bypass the defense perimeter. But as they drew closer, the factory's gun turrets swiveled to face them. "Damn it, we've been made!" Alex shouted from the co-pilot's seat. "Hang on!" The shuttle jinked and weaved as streams of plasma streaked past, barely missing them. Jack gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the craft steady. Somehow, through a combination of skill and sheer luck, they managed to land in one of the factory's docking bays. Jack and his team burst out of the shuttle, weapons blazing. Voth soldiers swarmed to meet them, plasma rifles spitting death. The humans took cover behind cargo crates, returning fire with grim determination. They fought their way deeper into the factory, facing resistance at every turn. Automated defense turrets tracked their movements, forcing them to constantly stay on the move. Voth soldiers seemed to pour out from every corridor and doorway, their numbers seemingly endless. But Alex was a force to be reckoned with. His rifle cracked with unerring precision, taking down Voth after Voth. His quick reflexes saved the team more than once, warning them of impending ambushes or taking out threats before they could fully materialize. At last they reached the bomb assembly line, a vast cavernous space filled with towering machinery, and there, standing guard, was a nightmarish figure. It was a Voth warrior, but not like any they had seen before. It stood over 8 feet tall, its body a grotesque fusion of reptilian flesh and gleaming metal. Cybernetic enhancements bristled from every limb, and its eyes glowed with a baleful red light. The super soldier let out a roar that shook the very air and charged at Jack, moving with terrifying speed. Jack barely had time to raise his rifle before the creature was upon him, swatting the weapon aside with contemptuous ease. They grappled in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, the Voth's enhanced strength and speed more than a match for Jack's combat skills. Punches that would have felled a normal human seemed to barely faze the creature. It was all Jack could do to avoid being crushed in its grasp. Just as it seemed that Jack would be overwhelmed, Alex leapt into the fray. He tackled the super soldier from behind, trying to get it into a chokehold. The creature thrashed and bucked, but Alex hung on with grim tenacity. The distraction was all Jack needed. He lunged for the assembly line, planting the explosives they had brought with them. "Alex, get clear!" he shouted. Alex disengaged from the super soldier and sprinted for cover. Barely avoiding a swipe from its massive fists, Jack slammed his hand down on the detonator. The explosives went off with a deafening roar, setting off a chain reaction that ripped through the factory. The super soldier disappeared in a blinding flash of light, consumed by the raging inferno. Jack and his team raced for the exit as the factory collapsed around them, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. They burst out into the open air just as the entire complex went up in a massive explosion, the shockwave knocking them off their feet. In orbit, the battle between the human fleet and the Voth was reaching its climax. The Resilience shuddered under the impacts of enemy fire, its shields straining to their limits. But it gave as good as it got, its cannons and torpedoes taking a heavy toll on the Voth ships. Just as it seemed that the tide might turn against the humans, the Voth command ship suddenly staggered. Explosions blossoming along its hull, the sabotage at the weapons factory had done its work. The planet-killer bombs had detonated prematurely, tearing the ship apart from within. With their command structure in disarray, the Voth forces fell into chaos. The human ships pressed their advantage, picking off the disorganized enemy vessels one by one. On the ground, Jack and his team watched from the rescue shuttle as the last Voth ship exploded into a billion glittering fragments. A cheer went up from the battered but victorious humans. They had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the Voth and saved Earth. In the aftermath of the battle, as the human resistance began the long process of rebuilding, Jack and Alex found themselves hailed as the saviors of humanity. Their names would go down in history as the heroes who had led the fight against the Voth oppressors. But even as they accepted the accolades, they knew that their work was not done. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, and there would always be new threats to face. But humanity would face them as one, united and strong. With a newfound sense of purpose, humanity turned its eyes to the stars, ready to embrace whatever destiny awaited them. The age of the Voth was over. The age of humanity had just begun. Years passed, and humanity rebuilt from the ashes of the war with the Voth. Colonies and outposts sprung up across the stars as mankind reclaimed its place in the galaxy. Admiral Jack Rains, hero of the Resistance, oversaw the defense of these fledgling settlements from his command post on Earth. Captain Alex Novak, once a young soldier fighting alongside Jack, now commanded the ISS Vanguard on the frontiers of known space. His mission: to explore, to make contact with new civilizations, and to expand humanity's reach. It was on one such mission that the Vanguard's long-range scanners picked up an anomaly, a derelict spacecraft drifting through the void. Alex, ever the adventurer, led a boarding party to investigate. They cut their way into the alien vessel, a strange, twisted thing of dark metal and pulsing conduits. Inside, they found signs of a civilization long gone, the Quarry, their name carved into the bulkheads in jagged script. But the Quarry were not gone. Not entirely. As Alex and his team ventured deeper into the ship, they found them. Survivors, if they could be called that. The Quarry were twisted, feral things, their bodies ravaged by a plague that had decimated their kind and left their worlds in ruins. They attacked without warning, screaming in a language no human could understand. Plasma fire lit up the darkened corridors as Alex and his soldiers fought back, but the Quarry were relentless. They swarmed over the boarding party, clawing and biting with a strength born of madness and desperation. Alex watched in horror as his men fell, their screams echoing through the ship. He fought with all the skill and fury he possessed, but a quarry claw found its mark, tearing through his suit and into the flesh beneath. Bleeding and battered, Alex ordered a retreat back to the Vanguard. They blasted their way out, leaving the derelict ship behind, but not before a quarry straggler lunged from the shadows and attached something to the Vanguard's hull, a strange pulsing device. On Earth, Admiral Rains pored over the reports coming in from the fringes of human space. Outposts attacked, ships destroyed, always with the same description of the attackers: feral, plague-ridden quarry. The device attached to the Vanguard's hull was a beacon, drawing the quarry like moths to a flame. More and more of their ships appeared, darting out of hyperspace to strike at human colonies before disappearing again. Rains knew they were facing a new kind of war, one against an enemy that sought not conquest but annihilation. He placed humanity's defenses on high alert and prayed it would be enough. On the Vanguard, Alex and his crew studied the quarry technology, searching for a weakness, a way to fight back against the relentless onslaught. And then Alex had an idea, a desperate, dangerous gamble. They would modify the beacon, turn it into a lure, draw the quarry in and then destroy them with a graviton pulse, a weapon of last resort. Rains was hesitant, but what choice did they have? The quarry grew bolder every day. The Vanguard set out alone, broadcasting its signal into the void, and the quarry came, dozens of ships dropping out of hyperspace, all converging on the lone human vessel. Alex watched them come, his finger hovering over the button that would unleash the graviton pulse. But then a shadow fell over the Vanguard, a quarry dreadnought, a behemoth of a ship bristling with weapons. It opened fire, and the Vanguard shook under the onslaught. Shields failed, hull integrity dropped. Alex knew they could not win this fight. Over the klaxons and the screams of twisting metal, he gave the order to abandon ship. His crew, loyal to the end, protested, but Alex would not be swayed. He would stay behind, pilot the Vanguard on one last mission. As the escape pods jettisoned away, Alex laid in a course straight for the heart of the quarry dreadnought. The Vanguard groaned and shuddered around him, but he pushed on, ignoring the wounds that burned in his flesh. "This is for Earth," he whispered. "For humanity." The graviton pulse erupted from the Vanguard's core, a blinding white light that engulfed the quarry dreadnought, the quarry fleet, the Vanguard itself. For a moment, there was pure, searing radiance. And then nothing, just the silent void of space and the scattered debris of 1,000 ships. In the blinding flash of the Vanguard's destruction, the quarry dreadnought vanished, consumed by the graviton pulse along with dozens of other quarry ships. The remaining alien vessels, their formation shattered and their leadership gone, milled about in confusion, easy prey for the vengeful human fleet. Admiral Jack Rains, his face hard with grief and rage, wasted no time in pressing the advantage. "All ships, engage at will!" he barked, his voice echoing across the comm channels. "Let's send these bastards back to hell!" The human ships surged forward, their weapons spitting fire. The Resilience led the charge, its advanced cannons tearing through the quarry hulls like tissue paper. Fighters and bombers swarmed around the larger ships, picking off the enemy's point defenses and leaving them vulnerable to the capital ship's heavy guns. It was a slaughter. The quarry, already reeling from the loss of their dreadnought, could offer little resistance. Their ships exploded one by one, their crews consumed by the flames of retribution. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Human ships, too, were blasted into oblivion, their crews sacrificing their lives to end the quarry threat once and for all. The Resilience itself took heavy damage, its hull pockmarked with scars, and its decks slick with the blood of the wounded and dying. As the last quarry ship shattered into 1,000,000 fragments, a ragged cheer went up from the human fleet. They had won. The quarry were defeated, their strange and terrible technology no longer a threat to humanity. But as Jack slumped back in his command chair, his face etched with exhaustion and sorrow, He knew that the true cost of the victory was yet to be counted. In the days that followed, the human fleet limped back to Earth, carrying their fallen heroes home. A somber memorial service was held, the names of the dead read out one by one, their sacrifices honored and remembered. Jack stood before the assembled mourners, his voice thick with emotion, as he delivered the eulogy for his friend and comrade Alex Novak. He spoke of Alex's bravery, his unwavering dedication to the cause of humanity, and the ultimate sacrifice he had made to ensure their victory. As the service ended and the mourners dispersed, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Reports started to trickle in from the far reaches of human space, strange sightings of quarry ships, entire colonies gone dark without explanation. At first, Jack dismissed the reports as the product of post-traumatic stress and paranoia. The quarry were defeated, their threat ended. It was natural for people to see phantoms in the shadows after such a harrowing war. But as the evidence mounted, Jack couldn't deny the truth any longer. The quarry threat wasn't over. Somehow, somewhere, they had survived and were rebuilding their forces for another attack. Jack pored over the intelligence reports, trying to piece together the puzzle. How had the quarry survived? Where were they hiding? And most importantly, what were they planning? The answer came in the form of a chilling message, broadcast across all human frequencies from a lone quarry ship in Earth's orbit. The quarry, it seemed, were merely the vanguard of a much larger and more powerful alien empire, the Zyrthax. The Zyrthax speaker, its image flickering on the view screens of every human ship and station, delivered an ultimatum. Humanity was to surrender unconditionally and submit to Zyrthax rule or face complete annihilation. The Zyrthax had been watching humanity's wars with the Voth and the Quarry, and had deemed them a threat to their own dominance. Jack's blood ran cold as he listened to the alien's words. He knew that humanity, for all its strength and resilience, could not hope to stand against the might of an entire galactic empire. But he also knew that surrender was not an option. To submit to the Zyrthax would be to lose everything they had fought for, their freedom, their self-determination, their very way of life. In that moment, Jack made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. With a heavy heart, he gave the order to activate humanity's last resort, a self-replicating nanobot swarm, capable of devouring entire planets and civilizations. The swarm, a product of humanity's darkest and most desperate research, had been developed in secret in the years following the Voth War. It was a weapon of unimaginable destructive power, one that Jack had hoped would never need to be used. But now, faced with the extinction of his species, Jack saw no other choice. The swarm was released, billions upon billions of microscopic machines spreading out from Earth like a plague. The Zyrthax, for all their advanced technology, had no defense against the swarm. Their ships, their worlds, their very bodies were consumed, broken down into their component atoms to fuel the swarm's relentless growth. In a matter of days, the Zyrthax Empire was no more, erased from existence as if it had never been. But the swarm did not stop there. It continued to spread, devouring everything in its path, including humanity's own colonies and outposts. Jack watched in horror as the reports came in, each one more devastating than the last. The swarm was unstoppable, a force of nature that respected no boundaries and spared no life. In the end, only Earth remained untouched, a lone island of life in a sea of death and destruction. As Jack stood on the surface of his homeworld, staring up at the stars that had once held such promise, he felt a profound sense of loss and regret. Humanity had won its freedom, but at what cost? The galaxy, once a tapestry of vibrant civilizations and endless possibility, was now a barren wasteland, devoid of life and meaning. And as Jack looked out at the empty expanse of space, he couldn't help but wonder if, in the end, it had all been worth it. The scars of the war would never fully heal, the weight of the lives lost, and the choices made forever etched into the collective soul of humanity. The war was over, but the true struggle, the struggle to find a new purpose, a new reason to go on in a galaxy forever changed, had only just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.